From Studio 1A in Tampa, Florida, comes a talk show that really feels your pain and tells you like it is. We love America and all that freedom-loving Americans want to protect. Live from coast to coast and on your radio, it's For the People with Keith Allen.
Let's make America great again, together hand in hand. America, united, safe and strong. Give us peace and prosperity, let freedom be our song.
Hello, Mr. and Mrs. America. I am Keith Allen and proudly welcoming you to this Tuesday's edition of For the People on this February the 14th. It's Valentine's Day on the year 2017, and happy Valentine's Day to all of you. And you may not be in the mood for love, but that's okay. We're going to be talking politics. That's what we do best here. And we inject our dose of common sense into each story. And an oddity today taking place, at least for me that is a Russian ship that's about 10 nautical miles as we speak or so off the coast of Delaware and what they call international waters. And this Russian spy ship can jam communications. It has surface-to-air missiles on it, and it's capable of doing a lot of things. And, of course, our military is monitoring the situation. It's just kind of odd. We got Flynn, who is on his way out, obviously. Trump's national security advisor, Mike Flynn. This is just a real odd story, and we wanted to just linger there for a little bit. We got the Russian ship, and then the Russian controversy about a cover-up, and who to better explain this is Krauthammer. He's a conservative commentator, and he was offering his opinion on the scandal snowballing about President Trump's national security advisor, Mike Flynn, saying that, in fact, it was a cover-up without a crime, but opining that either choice Trump makes will hurt him politically. Brett Barr began after recounting the events leading into the scandal. Charles, your thoughts as this is developing, and says, well, what strikes me, this is Charles speaking now, well, what strikes me is how bizarre the whole story is. Krauthammer reported, this is a cover-up without a crime. Very interesting how he puts this. He says the idea that one should be all aghast because the incoming national security advisor spoke with the Russian ambassador and spoke about sanctions seemed to me to be perfectly reasonable. The idea that it was illegal is preposterous. When I hear Nancy Pelosi get all upset about this and in the grip of the Russians showing us this to be absurdity. But then you ask yourself, well, then, why did he lie about it? Even internally, in talking to the vice president, and that shows a tremendous lapse of judgment and sort of a lack of trustworthiness. So the president is faced with a very difficult problem. If he fires him, then it puts in question the president's own judgment, choosing him in the first place, and then having to fire him within 3 weeks. On the other hand, this is a guy who has been advising him, stuck with him, who appears to have done the right thing in talking to the Russian ambassador, and done a crazy thing and lying about it to Pence, and he's got to decide how it's going to look. Either way, he's going to get hurt. Well, we know, if you haven't heard, Mike Flynn's out of there, made that decision. We got Petraeus and some others that are being considered for the post, but this is definitely not a good thing Already the White House in spin, control, trying to really level things off, and the media has been just raking Kellyanne Conway over the coals about Mike Flynn. And she, obviously, the counselor to the president, and answering questions during all sorts of newscasts. Matt Lauer, I'm sure that was so fun for Conway to be there. Matt Lauer. So he goes on, and let's see. Lauer reminded her that the Department of Justice alerted the incoming administration that Flynn had misled the White House last month. But wait a second. You're saying that this was the straw that broke the camel's back. The White House knew about the last month when the Justice Department warned the White House that General Flynn had not been completely honest in characterizing that conversation with the Russian ambassador, Lauer said. And then they even went further to say that as a result of that dishonesty, he was at risk for blackmailing by the Russians. Well, Conway didn't weigh in, didn't give Lauer all that satisfaction of what it was or what it wasn't. This is just Lauer trying to dig in there and trying to put some untruths in there. And again, very unfair for the media to do that, but, trying to poison the waters when he gets a chance to do it even more. But with all that said, this does give fodder to the left. This gives plenty of information, but it is troublesome in that Trump has been concerned about the loyalists, if you will, part of the government, those that have been very supportive of Barack Obama that are still in these positions, and where the leaks are coming from, because, in fact, these conversations were leaked. Who recorded them? Who released them? It's unbelievable. So this is a debacle into itself right now, and it doesn't necessarily go down the hatch very, very well. And the only thing I can say is that you got to get somebody confirmed into that post that can get the job done, because it's a very key position. And obviously, Flynn blew it. It's plain and simple. I don't know why he felt inclined to lie to Pence about it, of all people. I mean, that is like, if you can't trust your national security advisor locally, geez, you can only be so loyal. You got to tell the truth. So this is, it's really a shame for him, for his career, and what a hell of a way to go out. But now Flynn is taking to the Twitter sphere this morning, basically saying that he's the scapegoat, and it's fine if this helps the president and helps America be great again. So that's what he's saying at this point. So, what's going on? First of all, you don't lie. You don't lie to the vice president. You don't lie to the president. I mean, even though you may not have broken the law, still, you don't lie. Why would you lie about something? And supposedly it's that he forgot about certain instances in the conversation. Apparently, the whole conversation was, in fact, recorded, and it's there on record. Why it was recorded, why they recorded him, well, that's another thing, and then where the leak is. But it's just, again, it's an unfortunate situation here for Donald Trump to have to deal with, because he's really, and you have to listen to Michael Reagan from yesterday, and by the way, occasionally yours truly will make a mistake on the air, and so correcting yesterday, the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, was not the President of Canada, but the Prime Minister of Canada. And here is Michael Reagan saying some nice things about Donald Trump and his presidency thus far.
Yeah, it was a good start. And listen, it's 3 weeks that Donald Trump has been the president of the United States of America. And he's got to try to find a way to get along with leaders of other countries, like Canada, if you will. Because Canada is a very good friend of the United States of America. So it's a very good start. And remember, Brian Mulroney, it took a while for everybody to warm up to Ronald Reagan. Once they did, they did. And maybe it's going to take a while for everybody to warm up to the tweeter-in-chief.
The tweeter-in-chief. I love it. Well, that's the age that we live in right now. Social media. And if you're not connected to Facebook and Twitter, well, you're left behind. I mean, you can be in your 80s and 90s and tweeting and getting into it. It's a fast way to communicate. You can do it quickly and efficiently and effectively, and Donald Trump seems to do it. Now, he agitates a lot of folks. But again, the agitation sometimes is not a bad thing. It's just bad when your own peeps let you down. And this is a really bad thing because really Flynn has been a big, staunch supporter from the very beginning of Donald Trump. And so for loyalists, this today, I suppose, is just kind of a pain in your heart because, this is the opening that the liberal media just loves. And they will milk this to no end because, okay, well, that's happened to Flynn. Who else is in there? And then he can't even trust his own people. Oh, my God, we're going to see how long this lasts. So they're just going to have a big old time about this. But, will Petraeus succeed Flynn? That's a big question right now. I mean, barely just an hour after Flynn resigned, basically that's what happened. Resignation letter. And so, there's all sorts of conversation right now. The CIA Director David Petraeus emerged as a leading candidate to take over the NSC. John Gizzi from Newsmax puts this out. He says Flynn submitted his resignation late Monday, 3 days after White House counselor Steve Bannon reportedly demanded he leave for more than a week. The retired lieutenant general and one-time Defense Intelligence Agency had been belated by press reports that he had not been forthcoming about his full dealings with Russia as a private business consultant. So once likened to General Douglas MacArthur as the most brilliant military commanders of his generation, West Point graduate Petraeus, 64, rose to be commander of U.S. forces Afghanistan and commanding general of the multinational force overseeing all coalition forces in Iraq. Dismissing calls that he seek the Republican nomination for president, Petraeus stunned many fans on the right by accepting President Obama's offer to head the CIA in September 2011. So he could be back in the forefront. We'll see if he replaces Mike Flynn, but supposedly he is being spoken to as we are doing this broadcast. So we'll see what happens on there. Again, we didn't need to give any more fodder to it. And just onward and upward. And I know this was probably a very tough decision because Donald Trump is such the guy that, if you're loyal to him, he's going to be loyal to you. So, but it was a tough job. And for Pence, because, that's his Veep. And, both have to be able to trust. Remember, the vice president, he's a heartbeat away. Donald Trump, something should happen to him. Pence has got to be in that position. And there has to be trust between the two of them to work in harmony, and that's got to be the case. But apparently there's leaks in Washington, and that's not a good thing. So there has to be some serious investigation going on, and I really hope that whoever these moles are will be rooted out because it's very, very unfortunate. Now, lying, he didn't break the law, just make that clear for General Flynn. But why he had to stretch the truth or had amnesia, you don't forget things like this. It's just not a very, very cool thing. Now, you would not think this would happen, but this has to do with the New York Times. And the New York Times put out some garbage, and they put out some pretty horrendous stories about Donald Trump, obviously, leading up to the election and then so forth and so on. They're just not very complimentary. But the New York Times finally punished a reporter. Melania Trump was addressing delegates on the first day of the Republican National Convention on July 18th, 2016 at Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland. You remember that? You don't see the picture, but if you remember the elegant speech that she gave, according to one report, the New York Times has reprimanded an unnamed reporter in referring to the First Lady Melania Trump as a hooker at an event over the weekend that she had sat next to a Times reporter at an event on Sunday who made the claim about Trump about Melania being a hooker. And so it went on, and it kind of just went whispered down the lane, ha, ha, ha. And the New York Times says basically that this reporter hasn't reported on Washington or politics, and so we can't give him any